It's one of my favorite movie scenes ever. Give it a listen.
How did things ever get so far? I don't know. It was so unfortunate, so unnecessary.
How did things ever get so far? These are the words Marlon Brando's character, Vito Corleone, poses in The Godfather to the heads of the five families during a wartime peace brokering sit-down. You know, that question seems apt now as we appear in far too many realms to be at war with ourselves. Motorcycle pricing, retail practices, and dealer territories all seem to be part of the battlefield. Now look, some topics don't lend themselves to concision, so I'm about to explore those topics. So if you're interested, grab some coffee and settle in. Let's talk about motorcycle pricing. You know, cutting each other's throats when it comes to pricing motorcycles was the worst action the motorcycle industry could take. It hurts every stakeholder involved, including customers. And whether you are aware of it or not, people outside of the industry are shocked to learn that we are doing this to one another. You know, earlier in my career, the Harley-Davidson market was heating up and dealers were starting to mark up their motorcycle prices, right? Charging over MSRP or over suggested retail pricing. So I asked Tom Hannum Jr., I said, hey, should we mark up our motorcycles? And without hesitating, he said, no. Well, and I pushed back. I said, well, why not? You know, it seems like an easy way to make more money. And he said, because we're a Harley-Davidson dealer and we charge what Harley-Davidson tells us to charge. You know, that made sense even to my 22-year-old Budweiser-addled mind. And then he leaned in, a sure sign that I was about to receive a piece of whispered wisdom. And he said, and because there will come a time when customers will want us to charge less. And I don't want us to do that either. You know, I still marvel at Tom's prescience. Harley-Davidson suggested pricing for motorcycles is fair to all parties and is always defendable. See, the challenge with pricing is that when you mark them up, the customer can feel unfairly treated. When they are discounted, the customer comes to the conclusion that the product was already overpriced. The go-to-market strategy of selling on price and making up for it on volume really requires two elements. One, an almost unlimited supply of prospective buyers. And two, an almost unlimited supply of product. We have neither. Now let's talk about retail practices. You know, this idea of taking them up to take them down, or scrape them off the ceiling, or the square under the spare, or the four square close that looks like three-card Monty, or lying to customers is no way to create lifetime Harley-Davidson riders. None. So I'm in a dealership not too long ago, and I'm walking the showroom with a salesperson, and you know, we walked by a Softail, and I said, well, why don't you tell me about this bike? And he talked about it a bit, and he ended up by saying, it's a great bike, and I've got one. Well, I said, well, good for you. We moved on down, and there was a Road King. I said, tell me about this bike. He talked about it a bit, and he said, it's a great bike, and I have one. I stopped, and I asked in amazement, I said, hey, you have a Softail and a Road King? He looked at me and smiled and said, nope. That's just what I tell them. Listen, that is no way to build a career. None. And it's no way to build a business. I don't know where, I don't know when, I don't know how, but that is going to come back to bite you. Other things like marking up back-end products or creating expensive maintenance contracts and charging additional fees isn't the solution either. You know, look, back-end protections and fees, when reasonably priced, can provide terrific value to customers. When exorbitantly priced, they create an untenable negative equity situation. I don't know. Does anybody here have a trade-in? Yeah. Are the trades upside down? Of course they are. I mean, $1,300 dock fees? Are we serious? This is exactly why car salesperson always winds up near the top of Gallup Poll's list of least ethical professions. Always. We've seen this movie. This is exactly what happened to the car business. We don't have the potential market to do anything other than operate with the customer's best interests at heart. After reviewing profit and customer satisfaction rankings, a dealer once commented, and I'm paraphrasing here, well, I'd rather be in the top quartile in profit and in the bottom quartile in CSI than the other way around. Are dealer profit and customer satisfaction mutually exclusive? What if you could be in the top quartile in both categories? Now that would be world class. Let's talk about dealer territories, because this just might be the crux of the matter. Admittedly, my information is anecdotal, so you can tell me if I'm wildly off base here. But I think some dealers feel like their territory has been violated. I mean, doesn't it make sense to you that if you've purchased a dealership that has been assigned a territory, that territory should be reasonably protected? What if dealer territories were approached differently? Sell in another dealer's area and you lose the holdback and the unit sale. Next year, the dealer whose territory is violated gets the allocation. Seems like a reasonable idea to me. Some might call that anti-capitalistic. But listen, capitalism uses protections all the time. Others will say, well, the other dealer must just be that good. Well, if the other dealer is that good, why aren't they selling units in their own territory? The question we have to ask ourselves is, can we fix it? Business is comprised really of three things. Things we can control, our actions. Things we can influence, perhaps other actions, others' actions. And three, things we can't control or influence, like, the Federal Reserve rate or, heaven forfend, Bitcoin. Successful people spend 90% of their energy on what they can control, about 7% on what they can influence, and approximately 3% on what they can't control or influence. That's where they get the biggest return on their investment of time, energy, skill, and ability. If someone is regularly selling in a zip code that is not in their assigned territory, perhaps there should be substantive punitive consequences enforced by the manufacturer. That's what the manufacturer can control. And the dealer whose territory is being infringed upon should step up their game. That's what that dealer can control. Now, let's talk about influence. I believe normative pressure should be brought to bear from the network as a whole on negative practices. At DAC meetings, dealer association meetings, model announcement meetings, performance group meetings, district manager whenever dealers get together, tough conversations should be had about negative practices. You must nurture the culture you want to develop. In the Harley-Davidson world, we revel in the mindset and character of those tough, bright, tenacious people who went before us. And we should. Those age-old values can and should guide our modern day behavior. Almost 30 years ago, I attended my first Eastern Dealers Association meeting, and a contentious question was raised. And the question was, should Harley-Davidson dealers charge other Harley-Davidson dealers transportation charges for dealer trades? I know, simpler times. I watched as these dealers in the room, who were larger than life figures to me, debated this issue. And after a lot of discussion, Pap Schaefer, the longtime well-respected owner of Schaefer's Harley-Davidson, ended the conversation. In his stern tone and Pennsylvania accent, he admonished the group. He said, "We don't charge others for bringing a bike to a fellow dealer. It's simply the cost of doing business. We're Harley dealers, and we stick together like Harley dealers." And that was the last word. Attendees kind of, murmured their agreement, and the meeting moved on. And whether you agree with that notion or not, Pap's statement left an indelible impression on me. And although he is unfortunately no longer with us, and regrettably we lost his son Dennis earlier this year, Pap's words helped form a mindset that I still have to this day. I think Harley dealers should stick together like Harley dealers. All right, so where do we go from here? Well, we're not really at war, and we don't belong to the mafia, but we do need to have a sit down. I think it's healthy to face challenges head on and with candid conversations. But there will be those who don't want to raise these issues. Don't expect people to be throwing me any parades for this edition. Attorneys will fear legal action. Finance people fear revenue reduction. Marketing people fear loss of market share. Sales people fear loss of commissions. And employees fear reprisals. I'm getting a lot of people these days whispering in my ear and saying, "You didn't hear it from me." There's something going on in the culture, and it's not good. But if we don't start taking bold actions in the areas we examined above, I fear we may reach a place where the choice is no longer ours to make. Oh, some are going to say, "Oh, he's an alarmist," or, "Mark's exaggerating the situation," or, "there aren't really problems." Well, listen, there's a word for that kind of thinking: delusional. Businesses don't typically reward people for raising tough issues. They reward fast, easy solutions. Look, I don't know that there are any fast and easy solutions to our current business challenges. But here's what I do know. We are stronger when we stick together. We're stronger when we work together to create more riders. We're stronger when we work together to create better rider experiences. We're stronger when we work together to become world-class retailers. And our very future depends on finding that strength. So, here's my take on the survey questions. We should not call out other dealers publicly. Well, at least not in our marketing to customers. In dealer gatherings, we should present evidence and hold one another accountable. That being said, I do not think Orange County's ad crossed the line. No, they went right up to it, but I don't think they crossed it. I used that ad to make this conversation more tangible, and apparently it worked. Again, I'd like to personally thank Ray Malzo and Orange County Harley-Davidson for providing the platform to launch these crucial conversations. And I'd like to thank all of you who participated. It's because of you and your involvement that this community exists. Next week, back to our regularly scheduled programming. Now go sell something, will you?